Hi, Judith.
Hi, Serge. It's really
So
nice to see you.
several years later,
Uh-huh.
we're revisiting the question of what sustains you.
Yes. And as I have just listened and saw the taping that you did several years ago, I don't think I even answered that question very well. Um, and I am surprised at how different, how few years can make such a difference in a way. And I, as we were just talking before you started taping, I know I said some things that I wanted to be recorded. I don't remember what any of them are, except that one thing that I wasn't angry when I answered that first koan in the monastery. Um, but it's interesting now, freshly, when you ask me what sustains me, the main word, because I've asked myself this several times since you've been wanting to do this again. And I would say, okay, so what would I say? What sustains me? What sustains me? And the word that comes up first over and over and over is space.
Mm,
And I thought, wow, how interesting. How can I even elaborate on that? And I'm talking mostly about physical space, really.
yeah.
And thinking about it, recently, I had to realize that every single house that I ever lived in and could do and own, so I could do some repairs, I always took down a wall and made a room bigger.
Wow.
Yeah, really interesting. From because I needed to teach Tai Chi in the room or whatever. And now up in Canada, where I have my little cabin, I don't need to teach Tai Chi in that little room because I have a studio, which is large enough. It's good space. But the little cabin that I've been living in, I had to repair the front of it for the umpteenth time because the storms come and it rots and the windows were sagging. And so I had to put a real foundation underneath it and do the whole front, repair it again. And so I thought, oh, well, let's just make it larger. So I knocked down a wall again, and I'm in the process of making a larger, much larger than I need because I'm living there alone. But I love space.
Yeah. 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 So it feels, just as I'm listening to you say this, I feel, a sense of smiling. I feel a sense of, kind of widening in my body, kind of a sense of that reaction of the larger. I'm just experiencing a sense of pleasure at the notion of larger.
Mm-hmm. Great. And of course, I was just talking about outside space, wall.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
There's also the inside space. This has got to affect our breathing. And I wonder if it has affected your breathing. Did you
yeah,
breathe?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so very, very, very much that sense of, but, I mean, I respond to that notion of having more space. And so as you were talking, and I'm still feeling that sense of, just like constriction lifting and say, just
Right.
that kind of
Yeah.
widening.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. So boy, we're so lucky. You're in a lovely place in northern New Jersey. I'm in a place in Seattle and wish the border were open and I could go to my larger space
Mm.
in Canada. but space. And there are so many people now, and I'm thinking of at the border and stuff, that are just scrunched, and in refugee camps, and there's no space.
Yeah.
I would probably die.
Yeah.
I remember 1969, having come back from Asia, and I was studying authentic movement with Mary Whitehouse, the developer of authentic movement. And I remember in a private session once telling her that if I wasn't allowed to move, I would probably die. If somebody tied me down and I couldn't move, I would probably die. I need movement. And
Yeah.
again, that's space. If there's no space, you can't move.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's this connection, both inner for the breathing and outer for moving in space, and then more and more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're a dancer. You're a dancer, and a dancer needs space and movement.
Well, some dancers don't.
Hmm.
There are dances that you could squish. I mean, a lot of people or something, or that physical connection, which is wonderful. So there's the movement, and that's space. I don't know exactly how that. It's interesting. I made a little list. Space is at the top. What sustains me for Serge. Space is at the top, and then 1, 2, 3 other things, maybe 4, and then at the bottom I have movement. So it's sort of at the end of the list, but I really think they're the same. It's very, very much together.
Yeah. 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 So movement is kind of interacting, exploring space, being in space, occupying the space,
Feeling.
feeling the space.
Stretching is getting bigger. Movement.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we need space for all of that.
Yeah.
To an extent, you could lean against a wall and push against a wall, and there's still movement and stretching and exerting your muscles. But if there's no space, you can't do that very much.
Yeah, but when the idea of pushing against a wall gives me the idea of the impulse to expand, to push, to get more space. So in
Right.
that moment, it feels like being connected with making space.
Yes. Yes. If I had to, and when I wonder how that happened. When I was raised by a really wicked stepmother who made me sit and not move for hours. And I wonder how I did it. I mean, I wasn't
Yeah.
to move. I remember, if I had to go to the bathroom, I couldn't even do that. I just had to stay there on that little stool. I must have found some inner space, or else it would have been really much more difficult and horrible than it was. So I remember sitting there. Yeah, I probably found inner space and just would, breathe or stretched internally.
Wow. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How old were you?
I was 3 when my mother died in childbirth. And so this wicked stepmother came when I was 4.
Wow.
And really was pretty terrible. No space.
No
For sure.
space. No space, and being cramped, and yeah.
No space, no nothing. But yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
the next thing that I mentioned after space,
Yeah.
what sustains me, is space, nature. The ocean, now there's space. Trees, the sky, space. The sun in warmth. That's more just contact. I don't know about space, but definitely the ocean is one of the biggest connections that I've always had. and I'm not living near the ocean now, and I really, really miss it. In California, I was always drawn and stayed by the ocean, the waves and everything as much as I could. Up in Canada, there's water and space, amazing space, but it's not the ocean. So it's a different energy, different life.
Yeah. So when the ocean, is it the ocean in all its forms, or is it especially, say, when you're at the beach level and you see the water next to you, or just trying to get a sense of what is that that gives you that connection with the ocean.
What sustained me incredibly for years and years and years was, I don't know if you've ever been to Bolinas, California.
No.
It's a little, still partially a hippie village from the 50s and the 60s. And it's on the north, across the Golden Gate Bridge, north of San Francisco. And there's a highway that goes past it. And every time, for years and years and years, and probably still so, a sign that was put up that said Bolinas with an arrow, that's where you go off the highway to Bolinas. Within 24 hours, it was taken down. And the joke was that every inhabitant in Bolinas had at least one or two of those signs underneath their bed, because they didn't want anyone to come to Bolinas. Yeah, it has one bar, one store, one museum. It's a very small, wonderful thing. And I found, and for maybe 20 years, rented a house up on the cliff. So for me, the ideal relationship point is up high, so I can see the waves coming in, the waves, and the waves hitting the rocks, and the I don't swim. I have a very strange relationship with water. I love water, the ocean, and I'm also terrified of it. It's not that I can't swim, I know how to, I just sink. Because I think after many, many years, I've taken lessons and they don't understand why I don't float. I think it's because I don't have enough space in my cells because of that torturous time of growing up and contracting so much. Severely contracting. So I don't float, but boy, am I attracted to water. When I lived in Big Sur, that was ideal. There were mountains in the back and the ocean was there. So I lived and taught at Esalen for some years. And so that's my primary point, just be able to see the waves and hear the waves. And here in Seattle, people say, well, the ocean's right out there. And I go, that's a puddle. It's not the ocean. It's the Puget Sound, and there are lakes, but that's different.
Yeah, it doesn't have the waves. It doesn't have that kind of sense of vastness.
It doesn't have the energy.
Doesn't have the energy.
Yeah. So,
so when you're in that cabin, when you were at that cabin in north of San Francisco, and you could see the ocean and you felt the energy with the waves and the sound, that's great. But being in the waves, in the energy, is not good, because then it's like you get into that contracted sense.
Yeah. I think it was Bernard Shaw. There's a quote that there's nothing more wonderful than experiencing danger from a point of safety.
Wow.
Think of that a lot. I'm safe in this house, in this cabin, and I can see all of that. And the storms were just amazing and wonderful. And when I'm up in Canada, it's an island, and I do have a view of the Salish Sea, but it's beautiful, but it's the sea. There aren't any waves, except when the storms come. And the storms, rot my little cabin for 5 times in 20 years. But but I love it. And the sound of the, well, of the wind through the trees. But
Yeah.
back to that place in Bolinas, I couldn't afford it myself. So I shared it with three, we never found the fourth one, other therapists. And we each had 1 week a month. And we would go there and just rejuvenate. Yeah. We had our privacy because I never saw the other people. I just had arranged the whole thing. And once a year we met all together at Thanksgiving and, and shared that one day together. And then for years we just all were there, and it saved our lives in many, many ways. I don't know what it was for each of them, but I know it was very, very important.
Yeah, yeah. So for you, that connection with nature, with the energy of the ocean, but what you were mentioning before is that sense of that how you really love to experience, to see the danger from a place of safety.
The force, the
The force,
strength.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that moment where the force, you see it, but you are very clear that it's not directed at you.
And that I'm safe.
Yeah.
I mean, the water can hit the windows, and sometimes it feels like it's just, well, up in Canada, the whole place was rattling, but it was still secure is not the right word, because I don't know how secure it was. It was, I was sheltered in a way by this structure. And somehow, yes, felt secure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, but it's obviously not just feeling secure, because otherwise being on a lake, being on Puget Sound would feel okay because it's secure, but it's secure in the presence of danger. That
Right.
really, really is meaningful. So that sense of there is danger, but I'm okay. And so then you have a relationship with the dangerous, that you can see the beauty of it instead of being afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay so far. You never know.
Yes.
This little house was perched. It's when the earthquake comes next, it's going to be the first one down, and everybody knows it. So there was always that. But knock wood, that never happened. And so it was definitely, and it wasn't closed. I could close the windows, and it wasn't leaking very much. So there was that kind of seemingly security.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And the excitement of the of the energy, more than the danger, of the energy, of the strength of nature, of wind, of water, of all of that. It was
Right,
very,
right,
very,
right. So the
yeah,
excitement of the energy. And so, yeah, like the way as you as a dancer, as somebody who likes to move, have a lot of energy. And so maybe there's something about that energy of nature, that energy of the storm, that energy of the sea that resonates with your energy
absolutely, yeah.
when
Mhm.
you're safe.
Hopefully, you're right. Yes, yes. Now the funny thing is, up in Canada, where it's not, well, again, I'm on the edge of a cliff. I didn't know when I bought it that it was illegal to be that close to the edge of the cliff, 200 feet down. Um, and when there's a storm, it's really amazing. And the great big tall Douglas fir trees, I mean, they actually bend,
Wow.
which is terrifying. And the whole little cabin just rattles, sort of like Dorothy's, before they went to Oz.
Yeah.
Um, and I've even had to, the storms are so bad there sometimes, that I've had to look around and think, okay, because I'm alone and nobody is near, what do I do? And I figured that the only safe place in a storm in that little cabin, and it was very, very little, it's going to be bigger soon, is the bathtub, because I could get in it, and if a tree falls, I might be protected somehow. So that's my safety. If I need to, I'll go lie in the bathtub. I never had needed to. But it's a very rustic place, and I have to go outside and get wood to keep the fire going, to stay warm. And so facing the wind, I can't even open a door. So I go out the back way, and it is really fierce. It is so fierce, and I wouldn't say exciting, it's terrifying sometimes, but it's also wonderful being in that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And if I just go get some pieces of wood and come back, whew, I'm safe. It's quieter, it's drier, if it doesn't leak, and I can stay warm. So it's really an exciting time. We've gone from space to this excitement, haven't we?
Yeah, but I'm hearing that sense of, when it's nice when you mention we've gone from space to excitement. I realize I have an implicit connection, which may or may not be yours, between space and excitement. That the space feels like the storm, and the ocean feel so much bigger than yourself, that there might be something to that of being in that, that I'm wondering if maybe the intensity of the storm gives a sense of the vastness of the universe.
Oh yes, very much so. Yeah. And the thing that I love about the view that I have now, we've transferred to Canada in this little cabin, and it was only a fluke because I didn't choose the spot, but it looks over the water, the Salish Sea, the calm Salish Sea, past a few islands, and right up into a passageway, which is called Desolation Sound.
Wow.
Apparently, George Vancouver, if that was his name, who was exploring around there and naming things, was a manic depressive, and he was really depressed the day that he found sound. That's the story, and he just named it Desolation Sound. It's very beautiful, but it's almost endless. I look over some islands and up into infinity in a way. And that's my view. And so I sit there, and the storm is banging and everything, and I can still see up into space.
Yeah. Do you have a sense of what it feels like inside when you're there in a storm? I mean, you mentioned something about the wind being so fierce that you cannot open the front door. That also that there is the possibility of trees falling, to the point where you have investigating what you would do with a bathtub. So it's clearly this is not a place where you're unaware of danger. And so I'm curious about what the inner experience is.
Interesting question. Well, but my experience, inner and outer, is of having a lot of space. It's a postage stamp piece of property, but there's really nobody else around, nobody that would hear me for sure if I was screaming. So there's that space, that aloneness, that nature. There are really tall, big trees that I have somebody come and and check them out every year to make sure they're not dying, or maybe they're not going to fall unless something happens extraordinarily. But when you asked me, my first thought was danger of other people. If somebody wanted to come and attack me or kill me or whatever, nobody would know for a long time.
And so that feels more frightening.
Yeah, other people rather than nature. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting. Mm-hmm.
So that sense of the storm, nature in the form of a storm, may be very violent, but it is something in which you can be safe. You simply are in your home and you're safe. Whereas other people, there's a sense of the impossibility of being safe if they really are out of control.
So the danger of nature is natural.
Yeah.
And if a tree is so stressed that it has to fall, that's natural, and that's all part of the process of nature. Somebody deciding they wanted something that I had there, or whatever, that's not the kind of nature that I can find peace in.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be, and I think about it every now and then. It's on a dirt road, a few cars go by, somebody can do anything. And in fact, I just read just yesterday, they have a newsletter, the island does, and it says that there are more burglaries now. I don't know if it's because people, well, they've lost a lot of jobs there. There aren't many jobs on the island, but they lost various things are not open now, and that there are more thefts and burglaries.
Right. Yeah.
The stress of humanity, what's going on is really very stressful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 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 So what's happening as we're talking about this?
The stressful thing, I've gone off a little bit thinking that just a few months ago on that island, there was a lovely young man who had been living for years, you might say illegally. He built a little house for himself on Crown land. He was off the grid. Apparently it was great. He invited me a few times and I never made it, and I'm so sorry. It was really ingenious, wonderfully well-built house. And he died naturally, just naturally. And nobody knew, of course, until he was going to house sit for someone who was going off the island. And that someone came there to say, hey, you're late. Why haven't you come? And found him.
Wow.
Yeah. But that's that. And he was so happy. He lived such a wonderful life. I'm sorry I didn't get to visit him. And then my mind went to my sister who lived in an apartment in Oregon, who died in her bed, and nobody noticed. And this is in a populous place.
Yeah.
Nobody noticed until it was summer, and there started to be a smell, I guess, and that's how they found. So it's not just being alone in nature. It could be. I always thought about in New York City. I thought about that a lot. Boy, I'm in this apartment and nobody knows me or cares or anything. What happens if I die? This was in the 50s. I was thinking of that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So that sense of the ultimate experience of aloneness, whether in the middle of nature, away from everybody else, or in the middle of a very populated city.
Still away from everybody else.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm. I think connection sustains a lot of us. Thinking of just the therapeutic process, that connection, even if it's just once a week for 50 minutes or something, there's a big, important connection.
Yeah.
That's a connection, and in a way it's very mechanical because it's mechanical because it's planned and paid for, you might say, and might not even be the best choice for the two people. And it might be very wonderful because it does have that distance in it, but the connection of just the personal connection of a friend or a family, when that works, very necessary to sustain. Weren't there experiments done a long time? Well, we know that animals, if they don't have that connection, don't survive.
But yet at the same time, you like connection and you have connection, but you also very much like the isolation of the places you described.
Mm-hmm.
Is there kind of a balance between the two, or how do you see for you the?
I wouldn't call it isolation. I never think of it as I would call it space.
Yes. Okay.
So, but the fact is, for instance, when I'm up on the island all week long, I don't necessarily, unless I'm doing a class or something, I don't see anyone except on that Friday midday when the market is, the farmer's market. And the farm come and bring their vegetables, which I buy. And you say hello to these people selling other things. And that's, market day in a rural situation is really big, really, really big. But it's gotten to be so big, and I am quite an isolate. Sometimes it's even too big, so I go early to the market to buy my vegetables so I can get out of there before most of the people come, because it's just such a thick, heavy social thing that sometimes it's more. I like I do like the quiet enough, and I a lot, and I've wondered about that lately, because I don't think I was like that when I was younger. I remember, was I in the 60s when I was in San Francisco, I think maybe answering machines had just come out, and I had one with a red light on it. Still have one with a red light on it. And I would walk into my apartment, and the first thing I would look at was to see if the light was flashing. And I would come in and it would be, oh, nobody's called me today. Now, when I come in and look, it's like, oh, nobody's called me today. It was totally different.
But you also were training in Zen, which is kind of wanting to find a certain amount of quiet and isolation.
Yeah. And I surely did in Japan. I didn't go to the nunnery. I went to a monastery where I was rejected because I was a woman, but I was allowed to stay because the headmaster, the grand abbot, was so enlightened that he would let me stay. And I didn't speak much. Well, I didn't speak much at all. But and I lived in a little hut all by myself. on the grounds, but not with anyone. So it was very, very quiet. There were days and days when I didn't say anything, except maybe chant the sutras if I could, or answer the koan if I could. But yeah, it was very, very connected with nature and very connected with myself, hopefully, and very connected well with space. And it's interesting that I put, can you see it? There's a kakemono scroll behind me that was done by him. And it is that, famous Enzo. And the characters say, nothing missing, nothing added.
Wow. Nothing missing, nothing added. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And so referring to the circle itself as a perfect form, or just life in general, or yeah.
Yes, all of that. Yes. That's it. Yeah. But what I've thought on the more prosaic level is that for many, many, many years, being a single mother, really having 3 careers, one being, teaching Tai Chi, doing the therapy, teaching in graduate schools. I had to go out. I had to be out. I had to go to those parent meetings. I had to be upfront and arrange things and coordinate for my children. There was a lot of out there, and that red light blinking was always on. So now I never thought I would live this long. But it does have some advantages, along with the aches and the pains and the everything else's. I think I'm just, maybe finding balance, but coming back into my own space and quietness when I couldn't for so long. I never resented doing therapy. I always loved it. And it was a very singular space in one room that I didn't use for anything else, and paying attention to someone else's aches and pains and problems. It was really a relief compared to just so I could keep my children quiet. And now that I'm doing much less of that, I mean, still teaching some, still therapy some, having the time and the space for receiving whatever else there is to come.
Yeah. The time and the space for receiving whatever else comes.
Needs to come,
yeah.
Yeah. I have, I've almost always had chickens and a vegetable garden because I wanted to feed my children well. And now I have chickens. I talk, sometimes there are days when I talk to them more than anyone else, which is just fine. But again, connecting with nature, their nature, the nature of the weeds that I'm struggling with, and hopefully the nature of the vegetables that will be growing if the rabbits and the raccoons and the everything else and the crows and everything don't eat them. And I hear more now. The birds, the bees of late. This is time. Oh my gosh, the bees, to be able to hear the humming of heaven only knows how many bees. Yeah, the Charlotte Silver, who was my main mentor for many, many years in sensory awareness. Her teacher in Berlin, Elsa Gindler, who really started the work, and one of Gindler's students was Wilhelm Reich's second wife, and we all feel that she influenced him to bring body and energy and connection into psychoanalysis. Gindler has said, or Charlotte said that Gindler said that sometimes at night she could sit and be so quiet that she felt that she could feel the movement of the earth.
Mm.
I'm not that quiet.
Yeah. But so what I'm hearing a lot is that quiet, there's a quality of quiet. And that quality of quiet feels related to space and to being connected to that something larger of nature, at the extreme, to the point of hearing the movement of the earth. But something that feels like, there is, I was going to say spiritual quality to quiet, but not spiritual in the sense of a form, but something that's almost essential beyond any form that is given to it.
Yes, and not spiritual in the sense of escaping. That's not spiritual.
No.
Being right there, alive and fully in it.
Yeah.
Is the spiritual that I...
Right. And I'm wondering if maybe in the middle of the storm, when you said feeling safe in the middle of the storm, or, something, I forgot the exact quote you were mentioning, but I'm wondering if that's a moment of feeling in the contrast with the storm, or with the energy of nature, the energy of the ocean, the quietness, the presence of quietness in the middle of that, intense energy. I'm just curious.
Like the eye of the hurricane?
Yeah.
All hurricanes need eyes, I think we all need eyes or quiet spots. And for me, at this point in my life, yes, I need more quiet. I have no idea how I raised two children totally on my own, and managed 3 different careers all on my own for so long. And well, I do know that I wrote my dissertation between midnight and 6 a.m. While the children were asleep. So then 6:30, I had to get them up and off to school. But yeah, that quiet, and now I'm able to luxuriate in it in a way that I couldn't before. And I'm so grateful for nature. If I were, and you're in a place where I'm sure there's better nature and you can look out the window and maybe have walks better than you could in New York. Absolutely. And I keep saying, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I can look out and see green now. If I were looking out a window and saw a concrete wall or another building, I don't know. It wouldn't be very good for me. I'm so grateful for nature. Yeah. Green has become my favorite color. And it never was when I was growing up. Yeah.
So just, does it feel like a good place to end, or is there something you would want to add?
Oh, well, since we are going to have the other part 2, I just want to sort of do a continuation for that. I mentioned, and it must have been 4 years ago, that one of the things I was going to do, I found a place to donate all of my, I'm still looking for places to donate various of my books, but all the ones on the Holocaust, I was researching, giving it to the Holocaust Center for Humanity here in Seattle, and they were opening up a very well done small museum, and I became a docent. I think I said I was thinking of or going to be trained as a docent. So for the past few years, just the opposite. I've been going there and not been quiet.
Mm.
The museum is very small. The one in DC, my gosh, you need a week to go through it. This you can do in a couple of hours. And I've been meeting young people, school children, old people there, and and guiding them or explaining, answering whatever questions to them. And it's very tasteful, very clear. Most of it was created by survivors.
Mm.
And now children of survivors. And that's interesting. So I have space to do that, which was very, very important. And the ability to do that. I have the breath. I can talk to them and share different things and communicate. So I'm not totally an isolate. That's a very meaningful part for my life here in Seattle. I guess up on Cortez, that Friday market is the important, that's the social part. Yeah, and maybe when it opens again, I mean, it might be different, but I'm sure people will be very, very glad to see other people again.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In a way, it seems like the earth needed a pause.
Mm-hmm.
We've done so poorly about with the climate and pollution and everything. We were just going so full steam ahead and really not doing much. I thought that we're on the way to doing well, not using plastic bags, and and the people that I knew, everybody carried their own cup and everything. But then this last autumn, I was in Tibet, China, Thailand, and I thought, oh my God, I mean, just the market in Hanoi, the gazillion plastic bags that were used every single night for nothing that you needed. Well, some of them you did need. I thought, we're never going to get over the use of plastic and the junk that's in the ocean. And I got really, really depressed and unhappy. I thought we as humans had made progress.
Yeah.
I don't think we have. So I think the earth went tunk, something. Listen. We have to pay attention more. I have no idea of how we're coming out of this. If.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it seems so very, very important. And one of the most important things for me is, thank heavens that it's the whole world that's involved, not just a couple of countries with the virus that we could go, oh, sorry, or that's a shame or something, and not pay attention to it like we Americans have done in the past.
Right.
So I'm really glad that we're all involved with this.
We live in one world, and we're hopefully realize that we live in one world.
Yeah.
Thanks, Judyth.
Thank you so much, Serge.